Wait, did you know there's a place on Earth where you can literally stand with one foot in North America and one in South America? Where two oceans are separated by just 30 miles of land? That place is Panama. And trust me, its geography is absolutely wild. Panama is like the world's most important connector. It's the narrowest part of Central America, sandwiched between Costa Rica to the west and Colombia to the southeast. So, let's talk about where Panama actually sits. We're talking about a country that's roughly 480 kilometers long, that's about 300 miles, but incredibly narrow. At its widest point, Panama is only about 190 kilometers wide. At its narrowest, just 80 kilometers, that's 50 miles separating two oceans. And here's why Panama's geography is so bonkers. It's the only land bridge connecting two massive continents and the only place where you can physically drive from the Caribbean to the Pacific without leaving the country. But before we get to that famous canal, let me show you the natural geography that makes Panama so unique. Geography fact: Panama lies at roughly 9 degrees north of the equator, which means it's in the tropical zone year-round. Temperature, 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. Humidity, often through the roof. We're talking jungle mode activated. Panama's water boundaries. Panama's got two completely different coastlines, and they're night and day. On the Caribbean side, that's the north coast, you've got warm, shallow turquoise waters, the Caribbean Sea. The water is calmer, shallower, and it's been shaped by coral reefs for millennia. On the Pacific side, the southern coast, you've got deeper, darker blue water with bigger tides and stronger currents. And here's something tourists are always shocked to learn: the tidal difference. On the Caribbean side, tides are maybe 1 to 2 meters. On the Pacific side, tides can swing 5 to 6 meters. That's a 15 to 20 foot difference. Imagine building a canal through that. That's actually why the Panama Canal is genius. They dealt with tidal differences by using a lock system. But we'll get to that in a minute. First, let's talk about the actual landmass itself. Coast facts. Panama has roughly 2,988 kilometers of coastline. That's nearly 1,860 miles. Most of it is completely undeveloped. You could spend months exploring and never see the same beach twice. Moving inland, the landscape completely transforms. You've got three main geographical zones: the lowlands, the mid-elevation zone, and the highlands. The lowlands are these super wet jungle-covered plains that ring most of the country. The mid-elevations start around 500 meters and climb up. And then you've got the true highlands in the west that reach up to 3,400 meters. Here's a wild geography fact that explains everything about Panama's landscape. Some areas get 4,500 millimeters of rain per year. That's 14 feet of rain in 1 year. That's why the jungle is so impossibly thick, why everything is green, and why rivers are basically highways. Rainfall comparison. For context, New York City gets about 1100 millimeters of rain per year. Panama's rainiest areas get 4 times that. It's absolutely insane. All right, now we get to the geography that changed the world, the Panama Canal. But before we talk about the man-made wonder, let's talk about the natural geography that made it possible. For centuries, Spain and later France and the US were obsessed with finding a way to connect the Atlantic and Pacific without going around Cape Horn at the tip of South America, a journey that took months. Panama was the obvious choice because of one simple fact. The continental divide is lower here than anywhere else in Central America. The highest point you'd have to climb, only about 85 meters in some places. That might sound high, but compared to other parts of Central America, it's basically a speed bump. The landscape is dominated by the Chagres River and a natural basin that made the canal possible. That geography is pure luck, literally shaped Panama's entire destiny. Lowlands and jungle systems. The lowlands are the heart of Panama. We're talking about dense tropical rainforest that covers something like 65% of the country. This isn't just any jungle. This is one of the most biodiverse places on planet. The canopy is so thick that it creates its own microclimate. The Panamanian jungle isn't just a bunch of trees, it's a complex system. The roots create intricate networks. The canopy creates its own weather. There are places in the jungle that never, ever see direct sunlight. It's like a different world entirely, darker, damper, more alive than anywhere else on Earth. Jungle stats. 1 hectare of Panamanian rainforest can contain more tree species than all of North America combined. We're talking 10,000 plus plant species in a country the size of South Carolina. River systems and water geography. Panama's water geography is absolutely fascinating. The Chagres River, the one that made the canal possible, is a beast. It drops elevation incredibly fast, creating rapids and waterfalls. The river system creates a natural transportation network that indigenous peoples have used for centuries. When they built the canal, they actually created a massive artificial lake called Gatun Lake. This lake is 423 square kilometers, that's 163 miles of water in the middle of the jungle. It's the largest artificial lake by area created at the time. Think about that. They basically turned part of the geography into a water highway. Lake facts. Gatun Lake is a destination in its own right. Islands, wildlife, fishing. But it's also purely functional geography created to solve a problem. Lowland ecosystems and biodiversity. The lowland geography supports absolutely mind-blowing biodiversity. We're talking about jaguars, harpy eagles, poison dart frogs, manatees, capybaras, caimans, and animals from 6 different mammal families that don't live anywhere else on Earth together. And then there's the Darien Gap. This is a massive jungle wilderness on the border between Panama and Colombia. It's one of the last truly unexplored places on Earth, a dense, wet, impenetrable rainforest that's roughly 12,000 square kilometers. The geography is so hostile that there's literally no road connecting Central and South America here. The Pan-American Highway just stops. Geography literally prevents human development. Geography fact. The Darien is so remote that indigenous groups like the Guna people have lived there for centuries with minimal outside contact. The geography protects them. Now we're climbing. The western part of Panama is completely different geography. While the lowlands are hot, wet, and flat, the highlands are cool, misty, and mountainous. The landscape changes so dramatically that you're basically visiting 3 different countries in a few hours of driving. For every 100 meters of elevation you gain, temperature drops about 1 degree Celsius. So, in the lowlands, you're sweating at 30 degrees C. An hour's drive up the mountain, 20 degrees C. Higher up, 10 degrees C. The geography literally creates different climate zones where the same species of plants and animals can't even coexist. Welcome to Volcan Baru, Panama's crown jewel when it comes to mountains. This peak is 3,474 meters tall. That's 11,400 feet. It's the highest point in Panama, and the geography around it is absolutely stunning. Unlike other volcanoes in the region, Baru hasn't erupted since 1550, so the geography is stable and its slopes are covered in lush cloud forest. Here's the ultimate Panama geography flex. On the clear day from the summit of Volcan Baru, you can allegedly see both oceans, both the Caribbean and the Pacific, from one spot. Scientists debate whether it's actually visible on the same day, but the geography is so precise that it's theoretically possible. You're literally standing at a point where the topography allows a view to both major bodies of water. Summit facts. The climb takes 6 to 8 hours, and you usually start before dawn. Why? Because the clouds roll in by afternoon. The geography creates this microclimate where the peak is only clear in early morning. Cloud forests and bocate. The geography of the highlands creates cloud forests. These are rainforests that exist in the mist. Instead of getting water from direct rainfall, the trees actually absorb water from the clouds themselves. The landscape is eerie, beautiful, and completely unique. The most famous spot is the town of Bocate, nestled at 1,200 meters elevation in a highland valley. Bocate is famous for coffee, specifically geisha coffee and other high-altitude varieties. Why? Because the geography is absolutely perfect. The elevation, the volcanic soil, the drainage, the temperature, it all combines to create conditions where coffee beans develop complex flavors. The geography literally makes better coffee. This highland geography creates a microeconomy. Highland agriculture. Panama exports coffee to 30-plus countries. The geography of a 1,200-meter elevation valley changed the economic destiny of a region. Baru isn't alone. The Western Highlands are a series of ridges and peaks, part of the Talamanca Range that stretches from Costa Rica down into Panama. The geography creates a spine of mountains running east-west, which actually influences weather patterns for the entire country. The Caribbean side gets dumped on with rain because moisture-laden air hits these mountains and is forced to release precipitation. The position and height of these mountains means the Caribbean side gets roughly twice the rainfall of the Pacific side. Geography determines climate, which determines vegetation, which determines what animals can live there, which determines everything about the landscape. One mountain range changed everything. All right, let's talk about something that'll make you want to book a flight immediately. Panama's Caribbean coastline is absolutely spectacular. We're talking about some of the most pristine, undeveloped, untouched Caribbean geography on Earth. And the islands? Get ready. The San Blas Islands are a semi-autonomous archipelago with roughly 365 islands, one for supposedly every day of the year. Most are tiny, some are just sandbars with a few palm trees, but the geography, white sand beaches, turquoise lagoons, coral reefs, pristine. The islands are governed by the Guna people, an indigenous group that has maintained control of their geography for centuries. This autonomous status has actually protected the islands from development. Island facts. Only about 45 to 50 of the San Blas Islands are inhabited, the rest pure nature. The geography is so pristine that you can literally see fish 50 feet underwater. No pollution, no development, no human degradation. Bocas del Toro Archipelago. On the western Caribbean coast, you've got a different vibe, Bocas del Toro. This is a more developed Bohemian island archipelago. The geography is slightly different, more developed, more accessible, but still Caribbean vibes. The main island has this eclectic mix of architecture, street culture, and water sports geography. Bocas sits at the mouth of several river systems, which creates interesting geography. The rivers bring sediment, nutrients, and fresh water into the ocean. That mixing creates incredibly rich habitat diversity. You get mangrove forests, seagrass beds, coral reefs, and rocky shores all within sight of each other. For a marine biologist, it's like geography created a lab full of samples. Marine geography. That mixing of fresh and salt water creates brackish zones that most fish can't tolerate, but specialized species thrive in. The geography created a biological niche. Coral reefs and marine ecosystems. Panama's Caribbean coast has some of the most important coral reef geography in the Western Hemisphere. We're talking about a complex system of patch reefs, barrier reefs, and deep-sea trench systems. The geography creates habitat for thousands of species, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. Remember how we talked about the rainforest having incredible biodiversity? Well, the coral reefs are even more biodiverse. Panama's coral reefs contain 10% of the world's coral species in one country. That's approximately 250 to 350 species of coral living in Panamanian waters. The geography created a biodiversity hotspot. Reef facts. These reefs are built by tiny organisms called polyps, and they're only growing a few millimeters per year. The geography we're looking at took thousands of years to build. Now let's head around to the Pacific side and talk about completely different geography. The Pacific coast of Panama is dramatically different from the Caribbean. The water is deeper, darker, colder actually. The Humboldt Current brings cold water from the south. The coastline is more rugged, with bigger waves, rocky formations, and different ecosystems entirely. The Pacific coast is a surfer's paradise, specifically because of the geography. The continental slope is steeper here, which means deeper water and bigger wave potential. The geography also includes massive tidal swings. Remember those 5 to 6 meter tides, which means the coastline literally changes shape twice a day. Your favorite beach at high tide becomes a vast tidal flat at low tide. Tidal geography. The Pedicea area on the Pacific coast has tides so extreme that you can basically walk out nearly 1 kilometer at low tide. Then the ocean comes rushing back in. The geography is constantly reshaping itself. Pearls, islands, and Gulf geography. The Pacific side also has amazing island geography. Most famous is the Pearl Islands, the Archipelago de las Perlas, a group of about 200 islands and cays. These islands have different geography than the Caribbean islands. They're rockier, more mountainous, and they're surrounded by waters that support different species. Plus, they're culturally distinct. Some are inhabited by Afro-Caribbean communities with their own language and traditions. Contadora Island is the most famous Pearl Island, and its geography tells a wild story. The island was used as a leprosarium for centuries. People with leprosy were literally isolated here because the ocean geography created natural quarantine. Later, it became a resort destination. The geography literally shaped the human history of the island. Island geography. The Pearl Islands are far enough from the coast that they developed differently than mainland Panama. Species evolved in isolation. Humans arrived late. The geography protected them. Mangrove forests and coastal lagoons. Both coasts have incredible mangrove geography. These are trees with exposed root systems that extend into the water. Mangroves are incredibly important ecosystems. They're nurseries for fish, habitats for birds, protection from hurricanes, and filters for water. The geography of the roots creates unique habitats. Here's something wild. Most of the fish species that are commercially important to Panama spend their juvenile years in mangrove forests. The geography of the roots creates the perfect shelter for baby fish. Destroy the mangroves and you destroy the fishing industry. The geography literally is the economy. Economic geography. Some mangrove forests in Panama's lagoons are considered among the most productive ecosystems on Earth, measured by biomass. The geography is wealth. All right, let's dig into the really weird geography. Panama has something called the Continental Divide, but it's not actually divided the way you'd expect. In North America, the Continental Divide runs north-south, creating the Rocky Mountains. In Panama, it's more like a central plateau with lower points where water can flow in either direction depending on small elevation changes. There are places in Panama where rivers come from the same source but flow to opposite oceans. The geography is so intricate that indigenous waterways connect different sides of the country using just a few portages. The Chagres River on one side, other systems on the other. The geography almost naturally connects everything. Geography fact. The indigenous peoples used this geography for centuries. A canoe could go from Pacific to Caribbean with just a few days of paddling and portaging, following natural waterways. Earthquakes, plate tectonics, and geological activity. Panama sits in an interesting geological position. It's at the intersection of the Caribbean plate, the South American plate, and the Cocos plate. That means earthquakes are relatively common, though usually minor. The geography is actively being shaped by plate tectonics. In fact, Panama is still slowly rising and changing. About 3 million years ago, Panama didn't exist. The geography was open ocean. Then volcanic activity and tectonic processes created a chain of volcanoes and uplifted crust. Over time, this became the land bridge. The geography we're looking at is only 3 million years old, a baby in geological terms. That volcanic origin explains a lot. The mountainous topography, the geothermal activity in some areas, the mineral-rich soils. Geological timeline. The volcan Baru we looked at earlier, geologically recent. Many of the peaks and highlands are less than 100,000 years old. The geography is still being created. Climate, weather, and seasonal geography. Now let's talk about how geography controls climate. Panama has 2 seasons, wet May to November and dry December to April. But that's oversimplifying. The actual weather geography is much more complex. The Caribbean side is wet almost year-round. The Pacific side is more seasonal. The highlands are cooler and cloudier. The lowlands are hot and humid. Panama's weather is dominated by monsoons, wind systems that shift direction seasonally. From May to November, the southwest wind brings massive moisture from the Pacific. This wind hits the mountains, gets forced upward, cools, and drops rain. That's why the Caribbean side gets so much precipitation during these months. The geography of the mountains literally creates the weather. Weather geography. A place like Bocas del Toro might get 300 centimeters of rain annually. That's 10 feet. Meanwhile, some Pacific coastal areas might get only 150 centimeters. The geography creates a 2x difference in rainfall just 100 kilometers apart. hurricanes and tropical storms. Panama is in the hurricane belt, though it's not directly in the most active zone. Hurricane paths typically curve north towards Central America and Mexico. Still, tropical storms occasionally hit, and the geography responds dramatically. When a storm hits the Caribbean coast, it can dump 500 millimeters of rain in a single day. The geography of narrow channels and mountains channels water into rivers which can flood dramatically. Because Panama's geography is mountainous and the population is concentrated in specific areas, hurricane geography becomes a serious concern. The Pan-American Canal, for instance, was disrupted by Hurricane Otis a couple of years back. The geography creates vulnerability. A storm in one location can disrupt global trade because of the canal's importance. Risk geography. The geography that makes Panama strategically important also makes it vulnerable to weather. The narrowness that allows the canal also creates concentrated population risk. Microclimates and elevation zones. Because Panama spans such different elevations in a small area, you get dramatic microclimates. In the space of 2 hours driving, you might go from 30 degrees Celsius, 80% humidity lowland jungle to 15 degrees Celsius, misty cloud forest. The geography creates distinct ecosystems stacked vertically. Each elevation band is its own climate. Species boundaries in Panama are largely determined by elevation. You won't find jaguars in the cloud forests, it's too cold. You won't find quetzals in the lowlands, it's too hot. The geography creates invisible boundaries where species can and cannot live. A 500-meter elevation change can put you in a completely different world, biologically speaking. Biogeography. The vertical layering of Panama's geography makes it one of the most biodiverse countries per unit area. Geological hazards and geographical constraints. The geography also creates challenges. The mountains are prone to landslides, especially during heavy rains. The lowland areas sometimes suffer flooding because the geography is so flat and waterlogged. The coastal areas are prone to erosion because of the tidal movements and wave action. The geography creates constraints on where humans can settle and build. Building anything in Panama requires understanding geography. The Pan-American Canal had to navigate around mountains, cross rivers, and deal with geological instability. The Panama Canal required engineers to understand the hydrology and geology in incredible detail. Modern development has to account for flooding, landslides, and earthquake risk. The geography constrains everything. Engineering geography. The same geography that makes Panama beautiful makes it expensive and difficult to build infrastructure. Panama's lowland geography supports what's called tropical wet forest or tropical rainforest. These are the densest, most biodiverse terrestrial ecosystems on Earth. The geography creates conditions where 10,000 plus plant species can coexist in an area the size of your state. How? Extreme niche specialization. Every tree, plant, and flower exploits a tiny vertical or seasonal niche. The forest geography is organized vertically. The emergent layer is above the canopy, huge individual trees. The canopy is the continuous tree layer where most photosynthesis happens. The understory is dark, humid, cool, and a different world entirely. The forest floor is nearly black pitch, decomposing. Each layer has its own temperature, humidity, light level, and species. It's like different planets stacked on top of each other. Cloud forests and misty elevation zones. As you climb into the highlands, the geography changes to cloud forest. This is where elevation geography creates constant mist and cloud coverage. The trees are shorter but incredibly dense. Everything is covered in moss and epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without harming them. The geography is wet, but different wetness, from the sky, not the ground. In cloud forests, the geography is so perfect for condensation that water is constantly falling from the sky as fog and mist. Trees have adapted to absorb water directly from the air through their leaves. The geography literally rearranges the water cycle. Clouds that would normally pass over become precipitation, but in a unique way. Water cycle geography. The geography of cloud forests means water availability is completely different than lowlands, less rain volume but more constant moisture. It's adapted plant species completely differently. Montane forest and Maramo transitions. At higher elevations, around 2,500 meters and up, the geography transitions to montane forest and then Maramo, grassland with shrubs. The trees get shorter and shorter as elevation increases. The wind is stronger, the temperature is lower, the growing season is shorter. The geography literally prevents tall trees from growing. There's actually a line on the geography of Panama's mountains called the wind line or the tree line. Above this elevation, trees literally can't grow tall because the wind is too strong and the conditions too harsh. It's not that trees don't exist, they do, but they're gnarled, twisted, and stunted. The geography creates a natural barrier. Tree line geography. The tree line on Volcan Baru is around 2,800 meters. Below that, dense forest. Above that, shrubland and grassland. The geography changed everything about what can grow there. Human biogeography and indigenous geography. Panama's geography isn't just about nature, it's about how humans adapted to geography. The Guna people adapted to the Caribbean island geography, creating a unique semi-aquatic culture. The Mbara and Wanan adapted to the jungle geography, developing sophisticated forest management. The Ngabe adapted to the mountain geography, creating a culture centered around highland agriculture. Indigenous peoples of Panama developed incredibly sophisticated understanding of local geography. They knew which plants grew where, which animals used which areas in which seasons, how to navigate the waterways, and how to manage the forests sustainably. Western science is now realizing that indigenous geography management actually increases biodiversity. The geography that seems wild was partially shaped by careful management over centuries. Cultural geography. The geography of Panama can't be understood without understanding indigenous relationships with that geography. For centuries, humans have been part of the ecosystem, shaping it deliberately. Panama's geography is changing rapidly due to human activity. Deforestation is the biggest threat. The geography of pristine rainforest is shrinking. Estimates suggest that maybe 30–40% of Panama's original forest geography is already gone, converted to pasture, agriculture, or development. The rate of loss is accelerating. The problem isn't just total deforestation, it's fragmentation. Remaining forests are being broken into smaller and smaller patches. The geography that once allowed jaguars to roam 100 kilometers now forces them to navigate between isolated forest patches. The geography of continuity is becoming the geography of islands. Species that need large territories can't find them. Fragmentation facts. Jaguar populations in Panama have declined 95% in the last century, largely because the geography of their habitat has been fragmented. Climate change and shifting geography. Climate change is literally changing Panama's geography. Temperatures are rising. Rainfall patterns are becoming more unpredictable. Wet seasons are getting wetter. Dry seasons are getting drier. The geography of where species can live is shifting. Cloud forests in Panama are particularly vulnerable. As temperatures rise, the clouds form at higher elevations. Some projections suggest that the geography of cloud forest could shift so high that it literally runs out of mountain. Endemic species that live only in specific cloud forests could go extinct. The geography is being rewritten by climate. Climate geography. Some species in Panama exist in altitudes so specific that a 500-meter upward shift would put them above Volcan Baru's summit. They have nowhere to go. Panama Canal and water geography challenges. The Panama Canal, for all its engineering brilliance, exists in tension with natural geography. The canal requires 52 million gallons of fresh water per ship to operate. In a country where water seems abundant, water is actually becoming scarce in the dry season. The geography of freshwater availability is being stressed by human use. canal operations, and water geography. In recent years, the Canal Authority has had to restrict transit during dry seasons because water levels in Gathun Lake were dropping. The geography wasn't providing enough water for both the canal and agricultural needs. This is a geography problem. The canal was built assuming water would always be abundant, but climate change is changing that. The geography is fighting back. Panama has recognized that its geography is worth protecting. About 25% of the country is in protected areas, national parks, forest reserves, and wildlife refuges. The geography includes some of the world's most important biodiversity hotspots, like the Darien National Park and the La Amistad International Park, shared with Costa Rica. Panama is actually expanding protected areas. The government and conservation organizations recognize that the geography is a global asset. Protecting it isn't just good for Panama, it's good for the entire planet's climate, biodiversity, and water cycles. The geography of conservation is growing. Some species have recovered in protected areas. Harpy eagle populations are rebounding. Jaguar populations are stabilizing. The geography responds quickly when protected from human pressure. The future of Panama's geography. Panama's geography is at a crossroads. On one hand, it's incredibly valuable. The canal, the biodiversity, the tourism, the ecosystem services. On the other hand, it's under pressure from deforestation, climate change, development, and population growth. The future of Panama's geography depends on decisions made right now. You might be wondering why this matters if you don't live in Panama. Well, here's the thing. Panama's geography is global geography. The canal that connects your daily life to global trade routes passes through Gatun Lake. The carbon that the rainforest sequesters affects your climate. The species in those jungles might hold medicinal compounds that save lives. The weather patterns influenced by Panama's mountains affect weather across the Caribbean and beyond. Geography isn't local, it's global. Panama is only about 0.06% of the world's land area, but it contains about 5% of the world's species. That's 100x concentration of life. It matters. Panama's geography is a miracle, a narrow strip of land that connects two continents, bridges two oceans, contains thousands of species, supports millions of people, and keeps global commerce flowing. Its mountains and valleys, jungles and islands, rivers and coasts. It's a country where geology is still actively shaping the landscape, where climate creates vertical worlds, where humans have learned to live in harmony with geography that wants to be wild. The question now is, what will Panama's geography become? Will we protect it, learn from it, and let it continue to evolve? Or will we push beyond what geography can sustain? The answer depends on choices made by people, both in Panama and around the world. Because in today's connected world, Panama's geography isn't just Panama's responsibility, it's all of ours. Thanks for exploring Panama's geography with me. If this made you want to visit, learn more, or take action for conservation, drop a comment. And if you want more geography videos that blow your mind, hit that subscribe button. Panama's geography is waiting.